Loose in the Caboose is definitely not my favourite Little Lulu cartoon for two main reasons. This is, of course, a Famous Studios cartoon from 1947. It's directed by Seymour, Kneitel, Izzy, Sparber and Myron, Waldman, written by Woody Gelman and Larry Riley, with a voice cast including Cecil, Jack Mercer and Jackson Beck. And there are two reasons why I don't love it. One, there's a lot of racism in this. There are at least 3 occasions where characters are depicted in a way that's quite racist. Well, 2 characters are, and then something that little Lulu does, not the most acceptable. I won't spoil it by going into details, but that, I could have lived with that. I didn't think that was particularly great. But the other reason I didn't love it is that the narrative just doesn't seem to be the most well thought through. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, maybe I'm pulling it apart too much, but it's unusual for little Lulu, at least with the ones that I've seen so far, for it to be quite poorly thought out. Little Lulu arrives at the train station, she buys a ticket, we see her getting her ticket, she then hears the train conductor saying that nobody gets on the train without a ticket. She looks at her ticket and puts it in her sock. Instead of showing it to the conductor, she puts it in her sock. That doesn't make sense. The next bit that doesn't make sense is that she approaches the conductor, she's trying to ask if this train goes to a certain location, and the conductor says, "You heard what I said," and then starts ranting and pulls the stool away so she can't get on. But there's no reason why he would believe she didn't have a ticket. Granted, she didn't have one in her hand, but he could have at least asked. So I thought the beginning was very poorly thought out. I don't think any of that makes any sense. She goes on the train anyway, which, fair enough, she has a ticket. The conductor thinks she doesn't have a ticket, so he spends the cartoon chasing her up and down the train, trying to get the ticket. And I will say, fair enough, credit where it's due, they interacted with the train really well, they managed to make it quite engaging, they made a good use of the space, the animation of the train is really, really nice. So if you can get over the initial hurdle of the narrative just not making sense at the beginning, then it's not too bad. If they'd found some other way, in fact, the easiest way to get over this would be little Lulu boarding the train, and then the conductor asking her for her ticket, and she can't find it. And we, the viewer, don't know where it is. That would have been better if we didn't see her putting it in her sock, but we saw her buying the ticket, so we know she has a ticket. Or maybe even we don't see her buying it, and we don't know until the very end whether or not she has a ticket, or if she's just trying to pull the wool over the conductor's eyes. There were so many ways they could have taken this. It would have made more sense, it would have been more engaging, it would have been more unpredictable. Yes, a lot of the chasing around the train would have still been the same, but as a viewer I would have found it more exciting, not knowing where things were going, whereas quite frankly it was pretty obvious ultimately what would happen. Although I will say I didn't know exactly how it was going to end, but at the same time, I don't believe the narrative is well thought out, which again is unusual because Little Lulu cartoons are usually pretty decent. The stories usually work really well, but aside from that, there are still elements that are good fun. The racist aspect isn't great and was not necessary. It's not like those characters were essential to the storytelling or depicting them in that way was ever going to be essential. Absolutely not at all. So they could have absolutely not done that in the film. The cartoon would have been basically exactly the same. So there are quite a few issues with this one. This might be the first Little Lulu cartoon I've seen where I've genuinely had absolute criticism. Whereas previously, yeah, there might be things I've not loved, but this one just isn't good. It really isn't good. Do I recommend it only if you're a Little Lulu fan? Other than that, I'd say it's not worth watching.